played. There is a judge with the latest injunction trying to stop the White House and the administration from using this 1780s law to deport some of these gang members. And so we hope to find out any minute what the White House is going to do.
2 minutes until the briefing. 2 minutes until the briefing.
I'll give you a shot.
Talking. I remember Wednesday. Got one of the days.
Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Happy Monday. Happy St. Patrick's Day. I see a lot of us are very festive in our green. Peter Ducey, I like it. First today, I want to address the devastating tornadoes and storms that have impacted many states throughout the South and the Midwest. As of this morning, more than 40 innocent lives have been lost, and many communities have been totally destroyed. The President has been actively monitoring the situation, and the Trump administration is engaged with governors and local officials to restore affected communities and livelihoods. Everyone impacted is in our prayers, and President Trump is fully prepared to assist state and local officials as they recover from the horrific damage. The President has had a very busy weekend, making our country and the world a much safer place. President Trump ordered decisive military action against the Houthi terrorists in Yemen. These Houthi terrorists have engaged in piracy, violence, and terrorism against American ships for years under the Biden administration, costing billions of dollars and putting innocent lives at risk. Joe Biden's pathetic weakness invited these unacceptable attacks. But there's a new sheriff in town, and his name is Donald Trump. And the world is officially on notice. America has a commander-in-chief whose peace through strength approach is unwavering and should not be tested. As the president said, no terrorist force will stop American commercial and naval vessels from freely sailing throughout the world. Houthi terrorists and their Iranian backers should not cross President Trump again, and the president has made that clear today. On another important matter, President Trump signed a proclamation invoking the Alien Enemies Act regarding the invasion of the United States by the foreign terrorist organization Tren de Aragua. At the president's direction, the Department of Homeland Security carried out a counter-terrorism operation deporting nearly 200 violent Tren de Aragua terrorists, which will save countless American lives. Thanks to the great work of the Department of State, these heinous monsters were extracted and removed to El Salvador, where they will no longer be able to pose any threats to the American public. Tren de Aragua is one of the most ruthless terrorist gangs in the world, and they are responsible for some of the most heinous crimes that have occurred in our nation's history in recent years, including the savage murders of beautiful Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray. President Trump promised Laken and Jocelyn's families during his campaign that he would demand justice for their beautiful girls, and that's exactly what he did. As the president acknowledged during his inaugural address on January 20th, he pledged to invoke this act, and he has no higher responsibility than to defend our country from threats and invasions. President Trump will continue his historic efforts to seal the border and prevent these illegal invaders from coming here in the first place. As the New York Times is acknowledged over the weekend, President Trump's policies are working. Here's how the Times summed it up. Illegal crossings at the U.S.-Mexico border are down to their lowest level in decades. Once crowded migrant shelters are empty. To return home in bigger numbers. The border is almost unrecognizable from just a couple of years ago, when hundreds of thousands of people from around the world were crossing into the United States every month in scenes of chaos and upheaval. This is the Trump effect in action, and again, those are the words from the New York Times. We didn't need a border security bill, we just needed President Trump. All of these actions taken together are contributing to a wave of optimism about the direction of our great country. According to brand new polling from NBC News, more registered voters say the United States is heading in the right direction than at any point since early 2004. Americans support President Trump's common sense approach that's getting our country back on track in record time. Meanwhile, the president's critics can't say the same. That same new NBC poll also found that the Democrat Party has reached an all-time low in popularity. It turns out when you let your hatred of President Trump get in the way of doing what is best for America, the people reject you. Who would have thought? Joining us today in our new media seat is Kelly Meyer. She is a White House correspondent with News Nation. News Nation started in 2021 and is one of America's fastest growing cable news networks with a focus on news for all of America. It's part of a larger ecosystem, Nexstar, which is home to News Nation, the political website The Hill, the broadcast network The CW, and local Nexstar stations. With that, kick us off, please, Kelly.
Thank you, Karoline. What do you say to Americans who want safe streets but are concerned due process is being violated?
The president is using every lever of his executive authority and his constitutional authority within the bounds of the immigration laws of our country to ensure that our streets are safer for law-abiding American citizens. And this administration is focused on detaining, arresting, and deporting illegal criminal aliens. And as you saw this past weekend, the president used his authority under the Alien Enemies Act to deport foreign terrorists. Tren de Aragua is now a designated foreign terrorist organization. And as I said, there were nearly 200 Tren de Aragua members who were sent to El Salvador this weekend. Countless lives will be saved because of this action. And if you talk to the families, the Angel families, as I mentioned, Laken Riley and Jocelyn Nungray, they understand the grave cost of life at the hands of these illegal terrorists. And the president is proud to deliver on that promise for them.
And just to follow up on that, this will be challenged later today in the courts. Does the president, does this allow him to defy the court order without having this the checks and balances and the separation of power?
No. In fact, this administration acted within the confines of the law, again, within the president's constitutional authority and under the authority granted to him under the Alien Enemies Act. We are quite confident in that, and we are wholly confident that we are going to win this case in court. Peter.
Thank you, Karoline. If you guys can't send 200 Tren de Aragua terrorists at a time to El Salvador, where are you going to send them instead?
It's a very good question. You'd have to ask the courts and the people on the left who are trying to fight this administration for doing the business that this president sought out to do, which is to deport these foreign terrorists. And we're very grateful to President Bukele and to El Salvador for accepting these heinous monsters where they will face justice.
And if these guys are terrorists at war with the United States, is President Trump considering anything more lethal to address them than just sticking them on a plane somewhere else?
Well, it sounded like you had a little bit of curiosity in the premise of your question, so I want to address it. These are designated foreign terrorists. The president signed a proclamation on February 20th, 2025, designating TDA as a foreign terrorist organization that was in consultation with the Attorney General and the Secretary of Treasury. That was pursuant to 8 U.S. Code 1189. The president has the right to do that. And I think nobody would argue that Tren de Aragua should be designated a foreign terrorist organization. If you want to have that argument, I'm happy to do it. These are heinous monsters, rapists, murderers, kidnappers, sexual assaulters, predators who have no right to be in this country, and they must be held accountable.
And something different. There is now a member of the European Parliament from France who does not think the U.S. represents the values of the Statue of Liberty anymore. They want the Statue of Liberty back. So is President Trump going to send the Statue of Liberty back to France?
Absolutely not. And my advice to that unnamed low-level French politician would be to remind them that it's only because of the United States of America that the French are not speaking German right now. So they should be very grateful to our great country. Kelly.
Is the administration prepared to give the court what it wants in terms of the time of the flights that departed, that went to El Salvador, and some of those details that the judge is asking for in trying to determine the timing? Clearly, the 5 named individuals were not deported in compliance, but looking more broadly, wanting to know about the timing of flights and so forth, because the verbal order did say turn around the flights if there's an issue. So is the administration prepared to provide that information?
I'm prepared to provide it right now. All of the planes that were subject to the written order, the judge's written order, took off before the order was entered in the courtroom on Saturday. And the administration will, of course, be happily answering all of those questions that the judge poses in court later today.
And for people who have due process questions about making certain that there wasn't anyone who was swept up who did not meet the criteria that you laid out, is there a way for the administration to provide more detail about how that was determined, who the individuals were that met this deportation order?
Yes, I can assure the American people that Customs and Border Patrol and ICE and the Department of Homeland Security are sure about the identities of the individuals who were on these planes and the threat that they pose to our homeland. They take this incredibly seriously. They are putting their lives on the line to deport these designated terrorists from our country, and they should be trusted to do that. And that's exactly what the American people elected this president to do.
Thanks, Caroline. Just to follow up on that then, so you're saying definitively that the administration can prove everyone that was put on those flights to El Salvador was either a member of Tren de Aragua, MS-13, or some other entity?
We've already provided the breakdown in the effort of transparency about the 261 illegal aliens who were deported. 137 of those were deported under the Alien Enemies Act. 101 of those were Venezuelans removed via Title VIII, which, as you know, are just regular immigration proceedings, and 23 of them were MS-13 Salvadorian gang members. There were also 2 MS-13 ringleaders as part of that group of 23 who President Bukele particularly expressed his gratitude for their return so he can demand justice in his home country. Jennifer.
Just follow, what criteria, though, other than, say, tattoos or maybe being in the wrong place at the wrong time, are they using to determine that someone is actually a member of one of these organizations?
intelligence and the men and women on the ground in the interior of our country who are finally being allowed to do their jobs. Their hands were tied under the previous administration, and as I said, they take their jobs very seriously. They should be trusted and respected by the American public with this operation. And of course, as I said to Kelly, the administration will provide all details to the questions that the court poses. Jennifer.
One more follow-up on that. Can you say how much the U.S. is paying El Salvador to imprison these Venezuelans? And then a different question on Russia. I was wondering if you could give us an update on the ceasefire negotiations, and is there anything you can share on the list that Putin passed along to President Trump for the things he's requesting?
Sure. To your first question, it was approximately $6 million to El Salvador for the detention of these foreign terrorists. And I would point out that is pennies on the dollar in comparison to the cost of life and the cost it would impose on the American taxpayer to house these terrorists in maximum security prisons here in the United States of America. And I would echo the message of our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who expressed his gratitude to President Bukele and El Salvador's government for their cooperation in this deal. As for Russia, as you know, the president announced last night on Air Force One on his return from his very busy weekend in Florida that he will be speaking to President Putin tomorrow. I won't get ahead of those negotiations, but I can say we are on the 10th yard line of peace, and we've never been closer to a peace deal than we are in this moment. And the president, as you know, is determined to get one done.
Karoline?
Sure.
I have two questions for you. One on the flights, but first on the president's post overnight, saying that the pardons that were issued by President Biden preemptively to members of the January 6th committee, that they're now null and void. Have attorneys here at the White House told President Trump that he has the legal authority to undo a pardon simply because it was signed by auto pen, as he said?
The president was begging the question that I think a lot of journalists in this room should be asking about whether or not the former president of the United States, who I think we can all finally agree was cognitively impaired. I know it took people some time to finally admit that, but we all know that to be true, as evidenced by his disastrous debate performance against President Trump during the campaign. I digress on that. But the president was raising the point that did the president even know about these pardons? Was his legal signature used without his consent or knowledge? And that's not just the president or me raising those questions, Caitlin. According to the New York Post, there are Biden officials from the previous White House who raised those questions and wondered if the president was even consulted about his legally binding signature being signed onto documents. And so I think it's a question that everybody in this room should be looking into, because certainly that would propose perhaps criminal or illegal behavior if staff members were signing the President of the United States autograph without his consent.
Biden is on the record talking about issuing preemptive pardons to these people.
But was he aware of his signature being used on every single pardon? That's a question you should ask the Biden White House.
Is there any evidence on that he wasn't aware of it?
You're a reporter. You should find out.
Okay,
Sean.
on the flights, so I have a question on the timeline of the flights. You keep talking about the judge's written order, which hit the docket Saturday night at about 7:26 p.m., but he issued a verbal order before that at about 6:45 and 6:48 p.m. based on the court hearing, a verbal order from the bench. Does the White House feel the need to comply with a verbal order from this judge?
Again, as I said, all of the planes subject to the written order of this judge departed U.S. soil, U.S. territory before the judge's written order.
But what about the verbal order, which of course carries the same legal weight as a written order, and said for the planes to turn around if they were in the air?
Well, there's actually questions about whether a verbal order carries the same weight as a legal order, as a written order, and our lawyers are determined to ask and answer those questions in court. Sean.
Hey, so on Friday, the president suggested at length that it should be illegal to criticize judges, but he has repeatedly criticized judges who rule against him, and Elon Musk is calling for impeachment of judges who have opposed the administration. So how are those two things not in conflict?
I have not heard the president talk about impeaching judges. I know you mentioned Mr. Musk's tweet, but I have not heard the president of the United States ask that. Mary.
Hey, thanks, Caroline. I wanted to ask about this video I saw this morning set to the tune of, I believe, Closing Time, about deportations of illegal migrants. What's the strategy behind the White House's videos they've been putting out on this, and can you kind of talk us through the thinking on these videos?
Sure. I think the White House and our entire government clearly is leaning into the message of this president. And we are unafraid to double down and to take responsibility and ownership of the serious decisions that are being made. The president was elected with an overwhelming mandate to launch the largest mass deportation campaign in American history, and that's exactly what he is doing. And to this very day, we are now, I think, 56 or 7 days into the administration by my count. The president still receives an overwhelming public support for the policies that he is enacting. So we are unafraid to message effectively what the president is doing on a daily basis to make our communities safer. And the specific video you referenced, I think it sums up our immigration policy pretty well. You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here. Go ahead.
Thanks, Caroline. I have two questions. First, will President Trump put sanctions on Russia if the talks on Tuesday don't go as hoped? And secondly, have any illegal immigrants self-deported through CBP home yet?
To your first question, it's something the president has floated, and certainly he's willing to do if necessary. I don't have anything to read out, and I would never get ahead of the president on such a serious decision. To your second question about the CBP Home app, I would have to check in with the Department of Homeland Security, but it's a great question, and we're very proud to repurpose this app, which the Biden administration abused to facilitate the mass illegal entry of illegal immigrants into our country. It was like a fast pass at Disneyland. That's not happening under this administration. We are encouraging illegal immigrants to actively self-deport to maybe save themselves from being in one of these fun videos. Sure. John, good to see you.
Thank you. After President Trump strafe-bombed the Houthis yesterday, he said that if they retaliate, he was going to personally hold Iran accountable for that. Holding them accountable, what would that look like?
Well, I would defer you to what the president put out this morning, John, where he said very clearly, I will read it, "Let nobody be fooled. The hundreds of attacks being made by Houthi, the sinister mobsters and thugs based in Yemen, who are hated by the Yemeni people, are all created by Iran. Any further attack or retaliation by the Houthis will be met with great force, and there is no guarantee that the force will stop there. Iran has played the innocent victim of rogue terrorists from which they've lost control, but they haven't lost control. They are dictating every move, giving them the weapons, supplying them with money and highly sophisticated military equipment, and even so-called intelligence. Every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon from this point forward as being a shot fired from the weapons and leadership of Iran. And Iran will be held responsible and suffer the consequences, and those consequences will be dire." That is a statement from the President of the United States just moments ago. I have nothing additional to share, but our message to Iran is you better take this president seriously, and I think the Houthis learned that the hard way this past weekend. As I said in my opening remarks, there's a new sheriff in town, and this president is not just going to sit on his hands and allow terrorists to launch attacks on commercial vessels and U.S. naval ships. Those actions will not be tolerated. Sure, Edward.
Yeah, thanks. Caroline, on the economy. So after mostly a down week last week in the economy, you've been very vocal as well as other cabinet members about how we're in a transition and about how this economic transition, and there's a plan, a long-term plan for tariffs on this. How concerned is the president that the markets and Americans, for lack of a better term, will freak out over these tariffs and be concerned about a long-term plan?
Sure. I think I've been asked this question and answered this question respectfully, Edward. We are in a period of transition. The president has made that clear. He also has made his belief in tariffs and what they will do for our great country clear, restoring wealth back to our country. And if you look at the president's first-term economic formula, massive deregulation, tax cuts, lowering the cost of living with an energy boom, which the American people can expect soon. Wall Street and Main Street should both be assured by what President Trump did in his first term. It's the exact same formula. In fact, I would argue it's even better this time around. And if you look at some of the economic indicators in the last week, the latest CPI report last week beat expectations. Inflation is cooling. Core inflation dropped for the first time in 4 months. The national average of the price of gas is down 42 cents from 1 year ago. And there was also a new report out this morning about wholesale egg prices. They continue to fall. A dozen eggs are now $3.10 cheaper since January 24th. first, that's a 47% decrease overall. So I think the American people do have great reason to be optimistic about this economy. And as I've said repeatedly, it continues to be true. The administration has a whole of government effort to fix the economic mess created by Biden.
So the president's pointed to that April 2nd tariff deadline, so to speak. Is the tariff back and forth sort of done now? We're just all looking towards April 2nd?
Well, I think the president would tell you that all options are always on the table, and he's always ready to respond if he feels the United States is being unfairly treated by our allies and also our competitors around the world. But yes, the April 2nd day is a big day for the country, as the president has said. Reciprocal tariffs will go into effect. We'll have more details on that as the date nears, but our entire trade team, Secretary Lutnick, Secretary Bessent, the vice president has been quite involved in these talks and discussions as well about what that will look like. And the president, as you always do, you will hear from him directly on it. Deborah Saunders, how are you?
Fine. How are you doing, Karoline?
Good, thanks.
Former pardon attorney Elizabeth Boyer believes she was fired for refusing to sign off on a move to restore gun rights to actor Mel Gibson. DOJ's Todd Blanche says no. But I want to know, is the administration dedicated to restoring gun rights to felons who serve their times? I ask this because I've talked to people who are pardoned. They felt that was important. Of course, this isn't necessarily for a pardon. What is the president's thinking on this issue?
Sure.
After you've served your sentence, should you have gun rights?
It's an important question. It is one I have not spoken to the president about on his views, but I will take it to him this afternoon. I will tell him you asked, and we will get you an answer. You're welcome. Jonathan.
Thanks a lot, Carolina. A question for you regarding the administration complying with judges' orders. I want to ask about an administration spokesperson who's the borders czar, Tom Homan. He was on Fox News.
We love Tom Homan.
And he was talking about the deportations, and he said the following. He said, "We're not stopping. I don't care what the judges think," which seems to me, just reading that, that you don't care what orders come from the federal bench. Is that the case? Can you clarify that, please?
Well, I think since you just quoted Tom, I'll quote Tom. He said, "I don't care what the judges think, but I can assure you that the administration is complying with the court order. And as I've said repeatedly from this podium, all of the flights that were subject to the judge's written order departed before the written order, and we are prepared to make that case in court later this afternoon."
And then if I could, on Russia, the president, as you pointed out, Caroline, made some remarks on Air Force One coming back from Florida, and he seemed to indicate that the conversation tomorrow concerns essentially dividing up assets, dividing up territory associated with the war in Ukraine. Has President Zelensky given President Trump that authority? Is that what is going to take place tomorrow?
Well, as you know, the president and his entire national security team have been engaged directly with President Zelensky and the Ukrainian team, and that has been part of the discussion between the president's team and the Ukrainians. As for where those lines will be drawn or any specifics, I am not going to get into that from this podium. It would be unwise for me to get ahead of the president's call with President Putin tomorrow. But again, I can assure you, in the effort of transparency, as this president always does, you will hear from him or one of us directly after that phone call tomorrow. Reagan.
Thank you, Caroline. There's a lot of focus on the judicial branch right now. The president has about 40 judicial appointments that he could make at this moment. Do you have an update on what the timeline would look like for those judicial appointments? And does the president have a list of potential nominees that he's vetting?
I do not have an update on a timeline, nor do I have a list, but I can certainly have our team gather that for you and provide it. You're welcome. Sure. Go ahead.
Sure. Thank you, Caroline. So the president is visiting the Kennedy Center this afternoon to attend a board meeting. A question about what happened a few weeks ago. The Kennedy Center got bomb threats targeting a performance by Xingyun Performing Arts, which is an American company showcasing China before communism. This company has been targeted, unfortunately, by the CCP for years. I'm wondering if this administration has a response to this, and also as the president is putting an emphasis on arts and culture, what's the administration's message to potentially foreign state actors who are trying to disrupt that in the U.S.?
Don't disrupt it. This administration will take that very seriously and hold you accountable. We obviously condemn any violence or threats of violence against American institutions. And the president will be traveling to the Kennedy Center later this afternoon. I look forward to going with him. As you know, he is now the chairman of the board of the Kennedy Center, where he hopes to restore arts and culture that embrace American tradition, don't disparage it, as we have unfortunately seen over the past several years. The president will be doing a tour of the center. In his business developer mind, I'm sure he will make some recommendations on how the center itself can be improved, but also will be discussing perhaps some future plays and musicals and theatrical programs that the center will be hosting under his new leadership and the board's new leadership. Daniel.
Will the president be discussing with Putin tomorrow the future of Volodymyr Zelensky, sort of a follow-up to John's question?
Again, I've been asked and answered this question now. I'm not going to get ahead of the president's discussion tomorrow, but after the phone call takes place, I can certainly provide a readout. Daniel.
Karoline, thank you so much. You mentioned earlier in the briefing that you guys are at the 10-yard line of peace. Given the amount of progress that you've made in such a short amount of time, is that an indictment of the previous administration's foreign policy stance, and is it just more proof that you need to talk to people to sort of get things done?
I think so. I think the previous administration is the reason this war began. As President Trump often says, this war would have never started if he were still in office. It only started because of the incompetence and the weakness of the previous administration, and President Trump is very proud of the progress that he and his team have made in such a short amount of time, and hopefully tomorrow that progress will move forward. Sure.
Thanks. There have been some media reports just in the last few hours that the administration has decided to withdraw from the International Center for the Prosecution of the Crime of Aggression against Ukraine, which is designed to hold Putin accountable for war crimes. Are you able to confirm that? And if that has occurred, why has that occurred?
I'm not able to confirm it because I have not heard that. I will caution, I know there have been many inaccurate and misleading reports from Reuters lately, so I would caution anybody taking that seriously, but I can check in and get back to you.
Great, thanks, Karoline. Is it the president's belief that the Justice Department should be investigating members of the January 6th Select Committee? Is he directing the DOJ to do that?
As the president made it very clear in his address on Friday, I believe some of you were there, I was there, he made his vision for what he would like to see of the Department of Justice very clear, but he said that he has appointed great people in Attorney General Pam Bondi and also in our FBI Director Kash Patel to do what they think is best for our justice system and to stop the weaponization of justice that we saw under the previous administration against not just President Trump but his supporters as well. We want to restore the Department of Justice to an institution that focuses on fighting law and order and crime and putting real criminals behind bars, not targeting Americans because of their religion or their political speech. We saw that under the previous administration, and it's unacceptable to this president.
And just to follow up really quickly on just Homan's comments from earlier. A few weeks ago in the Oval Office, the president said he will always abide by the courts. We heard what Tom Homan said earlier today. So I'm only asking just to be clear for the American people. It is the administration's belief that that you feel like you are bound to comply by the judge's orders?
We are complying with the judge's orders.
Question on the storm.
Sure.
What role does the president see for FEMA with these storms? He's talking about getting rid of FEMA, states handling their own disasters. Does he plan to change how the federal government responds to these storms?
There hasn't been a change yet. That doesn't mean there couldn't be in the future. But as of right now, the president, the entire administration are actively monitoring the storms, as I said. In fact, before I came down here, there was an email note in my inbox from the Department of Homeland Security on what they are actually doing state by state across the board. So rest assured, Secretary Noem and her team is on it, and I would defer you to the Department of Homeland Security for any further details.
One more question. The president referenced power plants with a conversation with Vladimir Putin. What is he referring to with power plants? What is that?
There's a power plant that is on the border of Russia and Ukraine that was up for discussion with the Ukrainians, and he will address it in his call with Putin tomorrow.
The nuclear plant.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. Do you have a question?
Yes.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you if you would be releasing more granular data about the people who were sent to El Salvador this week. Particularly, will you be releasing their names?
I don't believe so because of the privacy concerns at this point in time. That doesn't mean we won't eventually. I would defer you to the Department of Homeland Security for more details on the individuals on the flights, but we have been incredibly transparent in giving you the breakdown of the numbers and also some of the crimes committed by these heinous criminals and individuals, kidnapping, sexual abuse of a child, robbery, aggravated assault on a police officer. I would remind everybody in this room that Tren de Aragua is a foreign terrorist organization operating within the United States of America because the previous administration allowed them to invade our country. These are monsters who tortured, raped, and murdered a 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungre. They murdered 22-year-old nursing student Laken Riley. They led a multi-state sex trafficking operation involving smuggling women into the United States, holding them in stash houses in Louisiana, Florida, New Jersey, Texas, and Virginia, and forcing them into prostitution. They kidnapped and murdered a 33-year-old woman in Texas. They sexually and physically assaulted a woman and her daughter in Wisconsin. They conducted a mass shooting in Illinois. They peddled untraceable ghost guns across New York City, took over an Aurora, Colorado apartment complex where they kidnapped and tortured victims. And by the way, many of you in the mainstream media said that didn't happen. It turned out that it did. And because of the effective immigration policies of this administration, those foreign terrorists were detained and they are no longer operating on American soil, and we have President Trump to thank for that. We'll see you guys later at the Kennedy Center. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Karoline.
You have at the White House briefing just ending right now as we continue our live coverage. I did want to share this with you, just a couple of programming notes as you take a live look right here of the U.S. Capitol. We are also expecting to hear from the State Department as well as the Pentagon later on today. The State Department briefing is set to get underway momentarily, and also we have the Pentagon press briefing as well. So we are going to bring those to you as they do get underway. Meanwhile, we do want to head back to the European Union as they are discussing how to fund the ongoing rebuilding efforts in Syria as the U.S. has now cut aid to the country.
الدول العربية تدعم خيارات الشعب السوري وتطلعاته نحو وطن ناهض جديد موحد وذي سيادة. رابعا، جامعة الدول العربية تدعو إلى رفع العقوبات المفروضة على الشعب السوري بشكل كامل كونها فقدت مبرر وجودها. خامسا، تدعو جامعة الدول.
All right, so this is from the League of Arab States right there. There is no current translation, but it does look like he has just ended as the commission leader is now addressing a new speaker. So let's continue to listen in.
Merci Madame la Commissaire, Mesdames, Messieurs. Je voudrais tout d'abord remercier les organisateurs et saluer l'attention qui est ici dédiée par les pays participants à la Syrie et leur volonté de la soutenir dans cette phase très délicate de son histoire. La Syrie reste dans
So this is the ambassador to the Vatican. You can see the Holy See right there. He is also not speaking in English, but we did want to just dip in to see if he would do so. We are also monitoring another live event right here. This takes us out to the United Kingdom. This is outside 10 Downing House, as we are expecting to hear from United Kingdom Prime Minister Keir Starmer as he welcomes the new Canadian Prime Minister, Mark Carney, to Downing Street. A short time ago, we actually saw a podium outside, and you also see these flashing lights as perhaps we're expecting them to walk outside and address the media. We, of course, will continue to monitor this. Meantime, it is St. Patrick's Day, and we did want to just share another few moments with you from New York City as they continue their parade. We did want to bring you just some moments there of the St. Patrick's Day parade in New York City. And we also invite you to join us on our YouTube page as we are streaming this in its entirety. It is St. Patrick's Day, and happy St. Patrick's Day to you. I'm Stephanie Quinn. Time right now is coming up on 1:54 Eastern, 10:54 Pacific. We are going to step away for a break here on Live Now from Fox, continuing our live coverage with Andy Mack after that.
All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox, and all things coming up green today on St. Patrick's Day. A live look there at the stock market, up almost 400 points today. I'm Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us here on this St. Patrick's Day, and thanks to my colleague Stephanie Quinn for carrying us the last several hours, diving into some of the top stories of the day, including that White House press briefing, and like she mentioned, the Pentagon also holding media availability as well as the State Department. So we'll take you out to those in the next hour or so. But as she mentioned, we're going to dive back into some of the festivities here on St. Patty's Day from around the country and also around the world. Here's a live picture right now, courtesy of our Earth Cam there in Dublin, Ireland, as they are enjoying this major holiday. They are taking to the streets, celebrating this from really sunrise to sunset, enjoying a beverage or two along the way. And also back here in the United States, you can see the river there in Chicago dyed green as they had their festivities over the weekend. It's always cool to see that in the heart of the Windy City over the weekend, but plenty of different festivities, including Savannah, Georgia, New York City, as we were just diving into, but all of these different parades, all these different celebrations. And of course, as luck might have it, let's take you out to yet another one. This one taking place in St. Paul, Minnesota. Our Fox 9 team continues their coverage of this main event through the streets there of the capital in the state of Minnesota. Let's listen into what they have to say here on Live Now.
Of hours here from noon until 2. Every day during the week, we take you to live events. Sometimes it's fun parades, sometimes it's things at the state capitol or different events happening, but this was such a great idea by, I believe, our assistant news director, Mike Durkin, is the one who kind of pushed this forward, and we're so glad that we did. Oh, wonderful, wonderful day.
I wish we could do this every day. This would be fun to do all the time.
Absolutely, I would love it. Yes, I think people would love that and welcome this kind of thing. You know, news can get really tough sometimes, and when we can do things like this, it's a really, really good day, Ryan.
It's fun. Adam is ready now for us. He is good to go. He's giving me the thumbs up, so let's check back in with him.
Yes, I'm good to go here, Ryan and Amy, and I'm here with a very special guest here in downtown St. Paul. This is Nancy, and Nancy, this is a big day for you, right?
It is. 75 years old.
Happy 75th birthday, Nancy.
Thank you, thank you.
And she is celebrating here at the St. Paul St. Patrick's Day Parade. Nancy, what's the best part about being born at St. Patrick's Day?
It's fun.
It's all fun. It's all fun. And how are you going to celebrate 75 years today?
Live another 75.
Nancy's going to live another 75. Maybe have a pint of Guinness with it and some corned beef and cabbage.
And we'll be right here.
And she'll be right here. Are you a St. Paul native, Nancy?
I am.
A St. Paul native at the St. Paul St. Patrick's Day Parade, bringing in 75 years. What a story, Nancy.
Thank you.
And happy birthday. Happy birthday.
Thank you. Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Hey, Adam.
Back to you all in the studio. I'm going to find some more fun people.
Okay.
Adam, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Can you ask her if she's an birthday girl?
Is she, wait, say that again. Is she a what birthday girl?
Is she an birthday girl?
An birthday girl. Are you an birthday girl?
I am.
She is an birthday girl and is very proud of her Irish roots and her Irish heritage.
Yep.
And there's no better day to be born than March 17th,
Right.
St. Patrick's Day.
Right.
Awesome. Thanks, Adam. Yes, Ryan and I trying to get to the bottom of what an birthday girl is, and we found one. I'm so happy. Happy birthday.
We found one. Yes, we did. Happy birthday. Yes. Yes.
Thank you.
Back to you all.
What a great day to be out there celebrating your birthday. Love it. And again, we're seeing some of the entries come through as we saw them at the beginning, and now we're kind of toward the mid-end point of the parade. So Ryan, your wish came true. We're queuing it back up and doing it all again.
Yep, I mean, sometimes you got to make things happen. This is an Irish dance, like a school here. Or they offer classes. I remember seeing this as part of my research for this, Amy.
I'm looking on here. Okay, so we see the County Galway. So this is the
Yep, the MacTier. Yep, MacTier Academy of Irish Dance is behind this group here. So you can see the young ones there jumping and
an assist here from producer Ross Tolman. MacTier is wolf. It means wolf, and it was founded by a woman by the name of Emily Wolfe. So there you go. Picking up some Irish along the way as well.
Confirmation that I mispronounced that completely too. So
I don't know if that's all. Can we hear any of this by any chance?
Let's see, Leo, can we hear? There we have it. And Amy, I'm glad we're kind of going through this. This was the part of the parade that got a little bit out of order. Either our notes were wrong or whatever happened. But so we're getting a chance to kind of go back and see some of these groups that we weren't really able to identify the first time around.
Yep, some Huskies in there we can see. Some breed education for some of those northern breeds as well. Allied Solutions, a St. Paul insurance company. Since '78, they've been in the community for a very long time.
I see Adam. He's got more people. Let's check in with him. Adam.
Here we go. That's right, Ryan and Amy. I found some more Creed and Darrell. It's all Creed and Darrell. Raiders! No. Raiders! Creed and Darrell is the pride of St. Paul. Yeah! Hey, nice little happy St. Patrick's Day. No school for Creed and Darrell. Unbelievable. It's spring break. Was it last week? Mexico! It is an extended spring break for the Creed and Darrell students, and they're celebrating big time here in downtown St. Paul. Back to you all out there.
Hey, Adam, can you hear me? Oh, it might get too loud. Adam, can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. Can you gather them around and let them know that we have a mission for them? We need to find Joe Mauer.
Okay.
Scatter.
Guys,
Let's go. Let's do it.
Alumnus Joe Mauer. Can we get him together? We're on it. The Creed kids are on him. CDH kids are on Joe Mauer.
All right. If anybody can do it, it's going to be these kids. I just know it.
We trust you all.
He's our favorite to love. We love Joe Mauer.
100%.
Joe Mauer Fieldhouse.
Absolutely. We all heart Joe Mauer. 100%. Now go get him, kids. Thanks, Adam.
Absolutely. Yes.
Man, Ryan, I don't know if somebody like you or me, we're pretty simple folks. I don't know that we could hang out there. I mean, I think Adam is the perfect person. I think Lauren is the perfect person. I think you and I would get swallowed up.
I think what the nice thing about this parade is it operates on all kinds of different speeds, right? So there's the Cretan speed right there. But if you want to just sit back and kind of watch from a good view, you can do that too. I would like Adam to ask those kids what they think of the 2003 state championship game when my Eden Prairie Eagles beat Cretan.
Oh gosh, it's too bad we don't have time for that.
Yeah, well, that's another show.
Bummer.
Yep. Where are we here? We're back at the brewery here, the Metro Gnome Brewery.
This is great. I love it. We get a chance to check back in on all of these folks, and we're just going to keep going because why not?
Why not? And Amy, you've mentioned this is the 58th annual St. Patrick's Day Parade in St. Paul. Do you know anything about the first one?
I got to go through my notes here, but I bet you do.
I'm ready.
Okay, let's hear it.
So the first one came together in about 2 months. This is according to the website, so I'm not like a historian or anything. And the parade started at the Hilton Hotel, which is now the Radisson, and it went down Kellogg Boulevard, and it went to the St. Paul Hotel. It took about 40 minutes. And Agnes Sullivan was the first Miss Shamrock, and William Hickey was the first Mr. Pat.
Oh, so that was in '67?
That was in 1967, yeah.
Wow.
Yep, they gathered at a restaurant on a cold day during the Winter Carnival. They gathered at Gallivan's Restaurant and Bar and came up with the idea of hosting a St. Patrick's Day parade. And the idea came together in 2 months, and here we are, 58 years later. Look at how many people go to tens of thousands come down to for this.
Yeah, it's just incredible. So many people have been going for so many years with their family. Once it's a tradition and you grow up with it, I feel like you just have to go every single. Hey, there's Lauren. You just have to go every year. It's just a part of just being from St. Paul and just it's just such a great piece of history there. And again, if you get a chance, go on the Historical Society's website. I know that sounds like not super exciting, but they have so much great information about how the Irish immigrants came here and how they really helped shape the city of St. Paul. Yeah, so you can see this is a dummy. So just there we go.
It's not Lauren.
Be clear,
no.
It's not okay.
It's not Lauren.
No, Lauren is fine.
That could have been me.
No reporters were harmed. Okay. Oh, back to life.
Good to go. Adam Lorenz is also fine. He has found maybe a family here, Adam?
Yes, we did, Ryan. This is the Davis family, and they're out here celebrating St. Patrick's Day. Yes. Hey, is this everybody? Is this your first St. Patrick's Day parade? The little kids here, yeah?
Yeah.
Wow. And what's your favorite part about being out here in St. Paul for the St. Patrick's Day parade?
The beads. Yeah.
The beats. Hey, what are you guys going to do for the rest of the day? How are you celebrating the rest of the day?
Well, these guys got to drive 4 hours, and we're going to do something don't care.
Oh, wow. 4-hour drive. All from Minnesota, yeah?
Yeah, Washington State.
Washington State. Oh, wow. We got people from Washington State, the Evergreen State, that are out here in downtown St. Paul. We got so many great people out here. Everybody's having a great time. Thank you so much, Davis family. Yes. Back to you all. I'm going to keep finding some more people. The parade's kind of ended here on the back end, but we still got a lot of revelers out here. We're going to have some more fun.
All right, Adam, sounds good. I think Lauren is ready to go too. You've got, Senator Tina Smith. Lauren?
Coming to me? Oh, hi. Hello. I've got Senator Tina Smith here, one of many important people we've seen along the route. How are you feeling so far?
Well, it's great to be here, and I'm really proud to be with these great public employees who are here talking about the great important job that they do, and I'm just glad to be here in solidarity with them.
It is a really special day where a lot of different organizations come together. Talk to me a little bit about the energy, because it's fun to see thousands of people here in St. Paul on a weekday.
Absolutely. I mean, it is Monday morning, right? And it feels really cold with the wind whistling through the roads, but people are excited, and I think there's a lot of positive energy.
What's on the agenda next for you today?
Well, I'm going to be, tomorrow, I'm going to be talking to a bunch of Minnesota veterans about health care. I'm going to be going out to Wilmer in a day or two to talk about turkeys and how we need to protect against avian influenza, and then I'm going to go up and talk to some farmers in McGregor a little later this week.
Well, I hope you can enjoy today. Thank you so much, Senator. Appreciate your time. Thank you, guys. All right, Amy, back to you. A lot of important people here today.
All right, thanks, Lauren. Oh, look at that little cutie with the bright green wig.
All right, just listening in there to the event in St. Paul, Minnesota, as they are capping off this holiday as well. So we're going to jump back into all of these events. But right now in our nation's capital, we see a press briefing starting this at the State Department. Let's take you right now out to Tammy Bruce, the spokesperson there, as we're diving into this live event.
During my first briefing, I said that under President Trump, peace through strength is back. That was clear from day one under this administration. The 11 days since my first briefing have further proven it. In an important advancement for peace, America's top diplomat, Secretary Marco Rubio, and National Security Advisor Mike Waltz traveled to Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, to meet with the Ukrainian delegation. As a result, Ukraine expressed readiness to accept the U.S. proposal to enact an immediate interim 30-day ceasefire to the Russia-Ukraine conflict. The ball is now in Russia's court, and even more advances have been made after Envoy Witkoff's visit there as well. Following this historic meeting, Secretary Rubio traveled to the G7 in Canada, where our partners expressed support for a swift end and a durable end to this conflict. And as we pursued peace, our nation also showed strength. Under the president's direction, this administration invoked the Alien Enemies Act of 1798 to initiate the removal of hundreds of dangerous members of the Tren de Aragua, a vicious, violent foreign terrorist organization, which has been threatening our nation, conducting irregular warfare, and terrorizing Americans. We express our sincere gratitude to President Bukele of El Salvador for playing a pivotal role in this transfer. As Secretary Rubio said, once again, President Bukele has shown he is not only the strongest security leader in our region, he's also a great friend of the United States. In our fight against terrorists, President Trump ordered the launch of decisive and powerful U.S. military deterrence operations against the Iranian-backed Houthi terrorists in Yemen. Following the strikes, Secretary Rubio noted that the president, quote, sent a powerful and clear message. These attacks on U.S. vessels and global shipping must stop, and we will hold you accountable. We will protect our people and freedom of navigation. In furtherance of President Trump's maximum pressure policy on the Iranian regime, last week the State Department announced sanctions on Iran's oil minister and shadow fleet that facilitates Iran's illicit crude oil trade. These actions were taken to stop the flow of revenue to the Iranian regime that uses to fuel conflict in the Middle East, advances its nuclear program, and supports its terrorist proxies. In addition, the State Department will consider revoking the visas of foreigners who have supported Hamas and unleashed anti-Semitic harassment, intimidation, vandalism, and violence on America's college campuses. As Secretary Rubio said on March 6th, those who support designated terrorist organizations, including Hamas, threaten U.S. national security. And we intend to use the department's broad authority to revoke visas when information comes to light indicating a visa holder may be inadmissible or ineligible under U.S. immigration law. Here's the bottom line. Secretary Rubio's State Department remains committed to advancing the national interests of the United States. Peace through strength is back. Not that we have a lot of things to discuss, and I see it all on your faces, but it is good to be back. I've been away for, I don't know, 10 days now or so, but I'm looking forward to answering your questions. We will begin again with Matt Lee.
Thank you, Tammy. I had 3 processy kind of questions, but for the sake of my colleagues, and I know there's a lot to ask, I'll break it down to 2. They'll be very brief.
All right.
1, on the South African ambassador who the secretary declared PNG on Friday.
Sure.
The South Africans seem to be a little bit miffed that they learned about this from a ex-post, and I understand there was a meeting at which a formal diplomatic note explaining this was handed over. Can you, what day was that, the meeting?
Well, it was the same day of
Friday.
the announcement, yes. So after Secretary Rubio made his decision, our senior level diplomats convoked the South African embassy staff for an in-person meeting at the State Department. At this meeting, our officials delivered the official notification of Ambassador Rasool's persona non grata status, and it was done.
Okay, and I understand that his privileges and immunities expired today, and that he has to leave by Friday?
That's right. So he has, for these 3 days that passed, he's had his privileges, but those did expire today. And he has, technically it's a week from the notice, and so that expires now on Friday.
Okay.
He'll need to be out of the country.
Okay, and then my second one is what you mentioned before on the AEA, the Alien Enemies Act. As you know, as this building certainly knows, there are several provisions that or several criteria that have to be met in order to invoke this. One is there being a declaration of war with the country in which this force is from, or that the invasion or incursion, or however you want to call it, is being orchestrated or influenced by a sovereign state. Does the U.S. now regard Nicolas Maduro as the legitimate head of state of Venezuela? And secondly, if you do, or even if you don't, are Maduro and the state of Venezuela now covered by the Foreign Sovereign Immunities Act?
You know, just before I came up here, my colleague, Karoline Leavitt, had a great deal to say about this. This belongs at the White House. This is a dynamic that's happening out of the White House. Well, but I also, in addition to that fact of referring you back to the White House and to DHS regarding this, this is in the courts. And as you know, I'm not going to pontificate on or guess or muse about what's going on with the courts at this point. So clearly the White House has been very transparent. Karoline was very clear this afternoon about their approach. Clearly, they feel that this is something they want to litigate, and they're going to. And for the good of the American public, it's an important thing to do. Everything we know that the Trump administration is doing, certainly President Trump himself and his team, is in the interest of the United States.
I understand
and that's why he was elected. People are excited about the nature of the actions that we're taking swiftly. And this is one of them, and we will see it play out in court, and that's the extent of what I'll be saying.
My question is not about...
So now there's a third section. I thought you said you were going to forego the third part.
No, I'd just like to have an answer to the first question. Does the U.S. consider Nicolas Maduro to be the
I'm not going to discuss with you again a national issue that belongs both with the White House and the Secretary himself, so I'm not going to be able to remark on that. All right. Based on the same dynamic here, I guess for the Americas, the situation, Andrea Mitchell, please.
This is related to immigration issue.
Sure.
And peace through strength.
Sure.
Does Secretary Rubio believed that if Afghanistan is among the countries that are there on a list, a draft list to be banned, that legitimate SIVs who were approved by the State Department during the fall of Afghanistan and withdrawal should be a carve-out, and that these people who help the State Department, the CIA, the DOD, can come and have refugee status. I do have a follow-up.
Well, first of all, there is no list. What people are looking at over these last several days is not a list that exists here that is being acted on. There is a review, as we know through the President's executive order, for us to look at the nature of what's going to help keep America safer in dealing with the issue of visas and who's allowed into the country. But what has been touted as something that is an item through the State Department, it just simply isn't the case. So the premise, I have to say, I certainly can't speak to because it's not accurate. When it comes to the nature of Afghanistan and those who've helped us, the arrangements we've made already in the past, getting as many people from that conflict here, certainly those who have assisted us and worked with us, that's been a policy and a dynamic that we've worked on from certainly even the previous administration, working to try to get that happening. So that's not something that is certainly I can talk about regarding something that doesn't exist, but certainly when that review is done, we'll have something that we can discuss.
Okay, then let me ask you also
Yes.
About your view, the Secretary's view, about the legality of a foreign country holding an American citizen from Iowa who has not been charged with any crime and holding his passport and not permitting him to return home in the case of what's happening in Punta Cana and the Dominican Republic, where this young man and his family and his lawyers say that he has not been permitted to leave the Dominican Republic, that he has been a cooperating witness, he's not charged with any crime. Does the State Department have any view about the rights of that U.S. citizen?
Well, I think what's appropriate here is for me to not to, and this is unfortunately the nature of the State Department and what we do. When it comes to diplomatic efforts, whether they exist or not, the nature of legal frameworks for individuals, the privacy issues involved, that's not something I can get into any detail about.
He has spoken publicly, and his family have. Does he have consular access?
Well, that's his. I think all of us have a right to speak and to be known, but we have a standard and a protocol here that we won't discuss a private situation, a private case. Certainly, when it comes to diplomacy, diplomatic relationships between one country and another, I'm not going to go into those details. All right, Sean.
Thanks. Can I go back to South Africa, the ambassador?
All right, you're just listening in there to questions and answers as Tammy Bruce, the State Department spokesperson, continues to reiterate, obviously from her first press briefing, talking about obviously peace through strength, that the theme of these first two press conferences, but plenty to talk about with the deportations to El Salvador, the conversation expected to take place tomorrow with President Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin, and much, much more. Let's slide away for a quick 2-minute break. More top headlines, and we'll get you back out to our nation's capital after this. right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack. Almost 2:30 on the East Coast as we're following the top stories of the day, and it's a trifecta of press conferences from our nation's capital. We already saw the White House press briefing with Karoline Leavitt. Coming up in just a little bit, we'll take you out to this, the Pentagon press briefing expected to begin here in just a little bit. But another live event with Tammy Bruce, the spokesperson for the State Department, talking about deportations and the legal hurdles there, but also Ukraine and the ceasefire deal that they're trying to work on. Negotiations continue. As they said, it is on the 10-yard line going in. Let's listen into this live event here on Live Now.
In the best interest of providing a safe, secure, more prosperous America, let alone world, when it comes to the decisions they're making. So all of this is under review, but obviously part of it is, within the diplomacy of it, is to encourage a change in policy and posture. Of course that would be the point. The point is to encourage a change. What I've seen with the trips we've made with the diplomatic adventures, of course, as well as the G7 summit in Canada, is the nature of the Secretary of State is to make things better for people. It is not to punish or to target people or countries. It's the nature of changing policy and creating better environments for all of us. And I've seen that in motion in every dynamic. And that's the case here with South Africa as well. Nadia, yes.
Thank you so much, Tammy. Good to see you. I have a couple of questions. On Yemen first, what is the U.S. strategy regarding Yemen? Is it degrading the capabilities of the Houthis that they don't pose a threat to U.S. interests, or is it destroying them completely? Because there's conflicting statements from U.S. officials saying, like, we're not going to interfere with the civil war in Yemen.
Well, what we've seen, of course, in the past when it comes to the Houthis, it was a tit-for-tat strike. If the Houthis would be sending missiles or attacking both commercial and military ships, what the previous administration did is they would do one strike as a tit-for-tat dynamic. What's happening now is a complete shift when it comes to the nature of why it's going on, which is to stop the assault on the maritime traffic in that area. And up to this point, there's about 174 attacks on American naval ships, which is an extraordinary number of attacks. And this isn't a situation that should be managed. It has to stop. So the message to the Houthis is, if this will end when you end the attack on both commercial and military ships in that region. So it's a maritime issue, and it's meant to completely change the posture of the Houthis, and of course, in a conjunction in that dynamic with Iran, that the days of pinprick responses where we allow that to occur is over. That's I think, a pretty clear statement from the administration as a whole as well.
On the visa thing, just
the visa,
quickly.
Sure.
Is the area clear when it comes to revoking visas for foreign students? Are you revoking visas for students who clearly support Hamas and shows literature that's supporting Hamas, or is it also include students who support Palestine or the they say the freedom of the Palestinians, or showing sympathy with civilians in Gaza? Is that area very clear?
Well, what Secretary Rubio has been saying on a number of different interviews is that this is about, when you think about someone applying to come into the country to get a visa, if you were to say everything that he ended up doing as would be his goal upon entering the country, we would never have issued the visa. So you have a dynamic, whereas if there's going to be certain kinds of actions that you're going to undertake, that we don't accept that. Every country has a right to control its borders and to determine who's going to come into the country. So in this particular instance, there's also, I know, a freedom of speech argument. But this is not about speech. It's about actions. It's about things that were done. And of course, I don't want to go further because also this is within a court dynamic. America's got the best court system in the world, and there will be arguments on both sides, no doubt, regarding this, but it has to be argued, it has to be litigated. But the actions that we take and the decisions we make are not about content. It's about actions that are occurring, and certainly in that particular case. Yes. Go ahead.
Hi, Tammy.
Hi.
Thank you. Just to follow up on the Houthis question. So President Trump said every shot fired by the Houthis will be looked upon as a shot fired by Iran. So we're wondering, if Houthis don't back down, is the United States prepared to attack Iran or give Israel to do so?
I think you're referring to President Trump's Truth Social tweet, and I'm sure you all have it on your phones. You should, because I'm going to refer you right back to that tweet. It speaks for itself.
Right. Just to follow up on a different topic in that case. So Voice of America and Radio Free Asia is one of the outlets under Voice of America. They have written extensively on the oppression of Uyghur Muslims by Chinese authorities. Actually, their reports have raised awareness about the plight of Uyghurs. And this is a topic that the Secretary feels strongly about as well. We've just seen him last week impose sanctions on Thai officials over deportation of Uyghurs to China.
That's right.
What does he think about the shutdown of this outlet? Does he support this decision?
Well, and what you're referring to, I think, is the VOA and some other outlets involved with the current, some budgetary changes and actions that have been taken. What I can tell you, like, with all the aspects that are happening in this shift, is that it's a fluid situation. And I look forward to watching it unfold, as you do. I know you're all reporters, and some reporters here in the bullpen have been affected. But the fact of the matter is, this is serious business. It's the business of government using taxpayer dollars. So the same standard applies here. And of course, it's just happened. Carrie Lake, as essentially the envoy within this framework, is someone that Americans know and trust, and I look forward to seeing how this unfolds. But right now, it's new, it's a fluid situation, and we'll have more for you as it unfolds.
When you say fluid,
right,
could it be overturned, you mean?
Go ahead.
Can I just follow up on Yemen and your assessment of civilian casualties? Because you'll know there have been reports of several. What's your assessment on that?
On civilian casualties? Well, under no situation does anyone want that. This is a horrible dynamic. At the same time, the Houthis are pirates who have commandeered an entire country, in addition to attempting to commandeer and threaten and harass shipping in the maritime area there. So when we think about this dynamic, America seeks to avoid that situation, but we're now in a position where it has become untenable. America's position in this kind of a regard, it's a unfortunate framework of war and of tensions and conflict like this. But of course, we lament, I think, this country of all countries, and what we've done and what we've accomplished. We lament the loss of life. That's the aspect. Because I think this is part of the real story. All of the aspects of what the Trump administration, what Secretary Rubio and everyone now in this new administration is focused on, and maybe it surprised people, it shouldn't have, is peace, is to stop the wholesale slaughter of people, is to stop the chaos that reigns through certain regions, is to make sure, especially with certainly Ukraine and Russia, is to make sure in every place where there's conflict, that the people that are alive today might be alive tomorrow. And it's imperfect, it's not something that any of us can sometimes predict the end result of. But this is an administration and a president and a Secretary of State who's made it clear that this, if there is a hallmark, the hallmark is fighting for peace and an end to this kind of chaos that has destroyed Yemenis' lives, and it destroys, obviously, too many lives around the world. Now, yes, sir, you've been waiting patiently. Yes, sir.
Two quick questions on the Palestinian issue. One pertaining to Gaza. Aid has not been allowed in since the 2nd of March. The situation is very dire. I was wondering if you are really concerned about this, especially, this coincided with the beginning of Ramadan as well, where people need food and water and so on. Is starvation used as a method to pressure people? Isn't that a war crime of some sort?
Well, for the horrible suffering of the Gazan people, we know where that sits. It sits with Hamas. We know that within the ceasefire, and why we fight for the ceasefire and want it to continue, is in fact to make sure that food and aid is moved into that region. The United States has led the way in that regard. We also know that at this point, when it comes to the nature of what Envoy Witkoff has worked on and what all of us still focus on is, in fact, what your concern is. Making sure that there's a situation on the ground that allows food to get to the people who need it, that allows aid to move through to the people who have been suffering because of the choices that Hamas has made throughout the years. And that is what we continue to work on. So everyone, certainly it's a concern, and that is why we continue to work to make sure that aid can get to the people who need it. Yes, sir.
Go ahead. Follow up.
Yeah.
Question on Syria. The Syrian Interim Authority last Thursday approved a new constitution. It has granted likely no rights for the minority like Kurds and Jews in Syria and has been rejected by these minorities, labeling it against the democracy. What's the U.S. view on that constitution? And does anyone in this department connected with the new Syrian Interim Authority? Do you have any engagement with them?
You know, again, when it comes to diplomatic engagements, situations as fluid and as situational like that one, that's not something I'm going to be able to answer. But I'll see what we can do when it comes to the specifics of what you've asked for. Yes. Right.
I have another question on Iraq.
All right.
Yeah. This administration, including Secretary Rubio himself, has called the Iraqi government to resume the Iraqi Kurdistan oil export and solve the U.S. oil companies' issue that are working in Iraq. But this hasn't happened. What's the U.S. view on that? Are you urging the Iraqi government to resume the oil export?
Again, I'm not, at this press briefing, I'm not going to go into international negotiations or diplomatic negotiations or thoughts that might be held by the Secretary of State. But we'll see when it comes to actions on that. It'll be, I think, abundantly clear. Yes, ma'am.
Syria. Thank you, Tammy. So Syria's new government, along with regional countries such as Turkey, Jordan, Qatar, and others, have been calling on the U.S. to lift the sanctions that was put in place during the Assad regime, and many view these sanctions as a significant barrier to stabilizing and rebuilding the country. Is the administration considering removing or maybe easing these sanctions?
Well, again, when we think about the administration, I think of President Trump and their posture and point of view regarding Syria, and the fact that when it comes to the State Department and the Secretary, these are things that would be negotiations that would have to be contemplated, and I'm not going to do that right here from this this podium. Yes, sir.
Thanks so much, Tammy. I appreciate you taking the question. Over the weekend,
depends on what the question is, but go for it.
Over the weekend, the U.S. deported a Lebanese citizen who was a doctor at Brown University. I was wondering if you might be able to elaborate why.
That, I would say, when it comes to that kind of action on everything we might discuss, that's the Department of Homeland Security. So that would be them.
And on violence, escalating violence in the West Bank, I guess, are there any concerns among at the State Department over what we're seeing in terms of Israeli actions in the north, in Jenin, in Tulkarm?
Well, the United States position, certainly the State Department, is that we stand steadfastly with Israel. Israel has seen certain security concerns that they have, and they're taking actions regarding those security concerns. And we stand with those decisions and what the Israelis choose to do in that framework. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Two questions. Changing subject to South Asia. A few days before the elections, President Trump, then as a candidate, has had...
Are you listening into the State Department briefing? Let's slide away for another quick 2-minute break. More top headlines after this. right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. It's all green everything on St. Patrick's Day as the stock market making a major rebound, up some 475 points. This comes after a downturn last week due to uncertainty with tariffs and also the continuing resolution that ultimately went through on Friday. Let's take you back out, though, to the State Department briefing to listen in to this live event from our nation's capital.
But obviously, I'll take it back and I'll get back to you so we can get some details in that regard. Yes, yes, sir.
Thank you so much. I also have a question on Russia, Ukraine. But before that, let me follow up on Radio Free Europe quickly from different angle. This administration last month secured one of the reporters jailed in Belarus, was working for Radio Free Europe. And I want to give you credit for that. Now, given how strongly you feel about the cases, can you assure us that you will continue securing the release of Radio Free Europe reporters, one of them in Azerbaijan and other countries, even if you end up defunding them?
Well, that's not something I can answer here, again, when it comes to the nature of the choices that will be made. But what I can tell you is that this is a country that has led the way from the very start of radio, of making sure that voices are heard everywhere. That this is something this country can be proud of. And it sits within the framework of what matters to us. At the same time, this nation has to look, and I don't think it's anything to be ashamed of, look to the nature of how America is going to be able to remain strong and safe and secure and more prosperous so that we can continue to move through with foreign aid, with facilitating voices that normally other parts of the world would not hear. It is a part of democracy. And of course, you want every nation to have that kind of commitment as well when it comes to who's able to be heard. So that's a commitment that stands. It is the heart of this nation. And certainly that's not going to be ending. The framework of certain things might change or how we facilitate them, but certainly not that commitment. And I think we've done a good job of that, and we should all be proud of it as well.
My second question, Tammy, on Russia, Ukraine, I was going actually, that was my original question.
Well, I've clearly lost the bucket of issues here as we've gone from a few things back. But go ahead.
On reports that the United States pulled back from international group investigating Russian crimes. What is the strategy there, and what message are you sending to Russia, who continues actually committing crimes as we speak?
Look, this is we're going to be looking into a number of different things. That's anecdotal, the nature. I'm not familiar with the nature of what happened, so I'm not going to be able to speak to that. Yes, right down the middle here. Yes, sir.
Thank you so much.
I think, the gentleman in front of you, sir. Go ahead.
Daniele Compatangelo for LH7, Italian TV and Primetime Media. So we both were at the G7 the last week.
We were.
And the focus was Ukraine. So today in Europe, there was European Council. They met, the foreign minister, and they discussed about Ukraine and the European Union proposals. So it seems like there are Europe is very divided right now, like Italy, Spain, Ukraine, Hungary and Slovakia are more aligned to Trump proposal. It's not proposal, but like plan. And the other ones, more lefties, are like, want to keep giving military aid to Ukraine. So what do you, as a State Department, how do you guys will interact with the European right now? Are we going to go for the Trump plans or the European ones?
I think we're going to go with the Marco Rubio approach, which is to talk to everybody, which is to put out the new ideas, which is to argue for them on the merits of those ideas. That's what happened at the G7. What happened at the G7 was a collection of people who have very different points of view, some big disagreements, but a direct, specific decision mentioned by the Canadian Foreign Minister Joly that we're going to focus on what we do have in common, what we can get done together, and really the importance of the gathering itself and what we can do together. There's a lot of people, I think, that would prefer us to be distracted by the disagreements. But what I've seen Secretary Rubio accomplish is remarkable, and in different environments where there's negotiations between countries attempting to stop war, a ministers' meeting where they're all aligned in some fashion or another and want to work together but have disagreements. I can say this, fortunately, having been there, is that it's been his voice, and I'm proud as an American that it happens to be the American Secretary of State. It's his voice that has brought conversations together, that has brought groups of people together. And we know this is why you need a State Department and why you need diplomats, because everybody's going to have different ideas. Everybody's going to think there's a better way, and we all have investments in the nature of the outcome. America is the strongest country in the world for a reason. All the combination of things we do, but mostly because we are a nation of merit and arguments and speech and the ability for people to be heard and for all of us to have an open mind. That is what Marco Rubio brings to this debate, especially in Europe where there are disagreements. We will, and he expects to, win people over based on the merits of the arguments that we continue to make every day. And I'm going to leave it there, everyone. I'll see you Wednesday and Friday this week if you didn't get enough. There'll be more to talk about. Thank you, everyone. I appreciate it.
All right, just listening in there, Tammy Bruce wrapping up this press conference there from the State Department. And as I mentioned, a trifecta of events today. It appears there will be a trifecta, a trio of State Department briefings this week, today, Wednesday, and Friday. So we'll get out to more top headlines with that here on Live Now from Fox. Coming up here in a matter of moments will be this event at the Pentagon. Will be the last of the three. We saw the White House, the State, and now the Pentagon expected to begin momentarily there with their press briefing. We're going to slide away for a quick 2-minute break. More top headlines. Welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Thank you so much for joining us. Coming up here in just a matter of moments, we'll take you out to the Pentagon, press briefing there in our nation's capital. This live event will take you out to it unfiltered here on St. Patrick's Day. And as we mentioned, all green everything as the stock market jumps up over 500 points. This after a major down during the last several weeks, including last week with uncertainty, concern over those tariffs, and also the continuing resolution that ultimately went through there on Friday. We're also monitoring here on Live Now from Fox overseas a meeting with Canada's new Prime Minister, Mark Carney. As you can see, just this event, this moment happening just a little bit ago in the United Kingdom as Carney was sworn in on Friday. He visited there with Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, also meeting with King Charles III as the head of state of Canada. Of course, they are not expected to hold a press conference, but this event, this moment happening just a little bit ago from the United Kingdom as Mark Carney there replacing Justin Trudeau in that position as the head of the party, at the head of Canada as the role of Prime Minister. So 10 Downing Street there, very busy as we are following it very closely here on Live Now from Fox. And as you might expect, coming up here in the Pentagon press briefing, plenty of conversations about the ongoing negotiations, the ceasefire deal between Ukraine and Russia. President Trump last night on Air Force One saying that he would speak with Vladimir Putin on Tuesday. For more on this, let's go out right now to Alex Hogan with the latest report.
With Russia?
President Trump is still pushing his Russian counterpart to agree to an immediate ceasefire in Ukraine. And on Tuesday, they'll hold their second known phone call since the start of Trump's second term. The president says his conversation with Vladimir Putin will be focused on concessions from both sides.
We'll be talking about land, we'll be talking about power plants, dividing up certain assets. Yeah, and they've been working on that.
The Ukrainians have already agreed to a ceasefire following a temporary pause in American military support, but giving up Ukrainian territory currently occupied by the Russian military could be a non-starter for President Volodymyr Zelensky.
We will do everything to make diplomacy effective, but every day now is about defending our independence, our state, and our people.
President Trump also floated the idea of more sanctions against Moscow if they don't stop their offensive in eastern Ukraine. Putin said last week he agreed to the idea of a ceasefire in principle, but only if it was focused on security guarantees for both Ukraine and Russia, including a promise that Ukraine will not become a member of NATO after Trump leaves office.
We are engaging in diplomacy, and that will involve both carrots and sticks to get both sides to the table, but to also resolve this in a way that is permanent and enduring.
Last week, Putin shot down the idea of a 30-day pause in fighting, saying it would be used by Ukraine to regroup and rearm its forces. In London, Alex Hogan, Fox News.
All right, thank you so much for that. And of course, coming up here at this Pentagon press briefing, you imagine quite a few questions about that conversation between President Trump and Putin set to take place tomorrow. Also, lengthy questions about what transpired over the weekend in the Middle East as President Trump ordered airstrikes against the Houthi rebels in Yemen. And now we are hearing also from the White House saying that any more attacks from the Houthis would be tantamount to Iran also making those attacks. So we'll see what we hear from the Pentagon coming up in just a little bit. Let's slide away for a final 2-minute break of this hour. We're back after this. All right, welcome back in here to Live and Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack, almost 3 o'clock on the East Coast as we will set to get you out to an event at the Pentagon as this is expected to begin, and plenty of international topics will be asked here as we're following all of them in Ukraine and Russia, but also with Israel and much, much more. I do want to continue on, though, as we're getting another event, another feed, this one coming from the United Kingdom as newly elected Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, there visiting with the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, but also with the royal family. You can see that saying this afternoon at Buckingham Palace, the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, was received in audience by the King there, King Charles. You can see in the left-hand portion of your screen. Let's take you right now out to the event as Carney is meeting with Starmer. Let's listen into this on Live Now from Fox.
Camaraderie, support for each other, and history and future.
Future, absolutely. Well, thank you, Keir. Merci beaucoup pour cet accueil. We have a remarkable history, as you said, between our countries, and it is remarkable because it's built on shared values. And we're at a point in history where the world is being reordered. And your leadership, the leadership of the UK, I'll use the example of the Ukraine, where what you've been able to do with President Macron to bring together a coalition of the willing at a crucial time, I think can be decisive and must be decisive in coming to a lasting solution there. As well, commercially, we are amongst each other's largest trading partners, largest investors. And this is a moment, whether it's in AI, whether it's in clean energy, life sciences, our two economies are headed in the same direction, and our partnership can only deepen. And if I may add one other, which is particularly in these days, our security cooperation, which is seamless, is essential. So the partnership is strong, and it will continue to grow at a time where, including through the G7, we can help reshape the world.
Great, thank you very much.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you.
I've been to this one. They're
probably not this route.
Yeah, because it's what is it?
All right, as you were just listening in there to a brief meeting, as we didn't know if we were going to get that event, but Mark Carney there, the new Prime Minister of Canada, replacing Justin Trudeau. That announcement coming within the last several weeks. They're meeting with different officials, including the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom, Keir Starmer. He also had an audience with the King earlier on today. This a post again from the royal family saying this afternoon at Buckingham Palace, the Prime Minister of Canada, Mark Carney, was received in audience by the King. So that taking place just a little bit ago as Buckingham Palace to 10 Downing Street. A busy day as Carney also meeting there with French officials, including Macron. So a busy several days since he was elevated into that position recently as the new Prime Minister there of Canada. So we're following it very closely here on Live Now from Fox. All right, as we continue to follow this very closely here on Live Now from Fox, we'll take you out to the Pentagon press briefing that it appears has just got underway, people stepping to the podium. So we'll take you out to this just in a mere moment. But we do see this, President Trump walking into this as he is meeting now with the media ahead of the Kennedy Center board meeting. Let's listen into this on Live Now from Fox. It appears the feed is frozen, but this is kind of what we do, as you can see them walking through some of the underground kind of...
They spent a fortune, $250 million, and they built these rooms that nobody's going to use, rooms underground. And I've often wondered, what are the big cubes that they have outside that block the view? They're cubes with a door in them. so that people can get down to rooms that nobody's going to use. And it's a shame. A song today, and because of the cost in the union structure, for him to sing a song just for the board, just a board meeting, that was going to cost $30,000. That doesn't sound too good. They wanted $30,000 to move a piano, so you can't have that. So we're gonna fix it up, but it's really emblematic of our country. But the Kennedy Center, you look at the columns outside, you look at, I mean, they're supposed to be covered by something, whether it's marble or whatever, granite. They were never covered. They were painted. But bringing it to more modern times, a lot of money's been given to it, and the money has not been properly spent. They built rooms underground with no windows, no nothing, that will not be used ever. You're not going to have people use them. It's such a waste of money, such a terrible waste, but we'll make it. Because we have open borders, we have men playing in women's sports. It's all the same thing. It did when I look around. The bottom line, it has tremendous potential, and we'll work with Congress.
All right, you can see there President Trump meeting with reporters as he is going to attend this Kennedy Center board meeting. We're going to stick with this, though, and hear what we can as you can see the signal is spotty. But let's just continue to listen in. Any pressing questions from the press pool, from the media here to the president there in Washington, D.C.
That they come here and they're come here. Our place in front of the
All right, as you continue to listen in live, raw, and unfiltered, that's what we do. This is the feed that we are getting into our newsroom, and we wanted to bring it to you no matter how spotty. Plenty of top headlines involving the president with the deportations, with the conversation he's expected to have tomorrow with Russian President Vladimir Putin. So we're just going to continue to hang with this here mere moments as hopefully they'll re-cue it back up and bring you out in full so we can hear some of these comments. I believe he was asked about some of the deportations to El Salvador that we saw yesterday. You can see the feed going in and out, and now it is black. So we won't take you back out to it, but we will let you know that as soon as it comes in clean and full, we will take you out to it, although it might be in slightly a few moments ago. All right, let's continue on, though. We do have this live event there from the Pentagon as officials providing an update on some of these topics I imagine President Trump was asked about. Let's listen in to this.
As President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have made clear, these actions by the Houthis will not be tolerated. In his first 2 days back at the White House, President Trump signed an order laying out a process to redesignate the Houthis as a foreign terrorist organization after the previous administration revoked their designation within weeks of taking office. Under the previous administration, America's enemies were emboldened and billions in frozen funds were unlocked for Iran. With President Trump and Secretary Hegseth's leadership, an era of peace through strength is back. We will use overwhelming lethal force until we have achieved our objective. With that said, and this is a very important point, this is also not an endless offensive. This is not about regime change in the Middle East. This is about putting American interests first. As I said over the weekend, there is a very clear end state to this operation. And that begins the moment that the Houthis pledge to stop attacking our ships and putting American lives at risk. Shifting focus to Africa, at the request of the federal government of Somalia, U.S. Africa Command Forces conducted collective self-defense airstrikes against al-Shabaab on March 15th. The airstrikes occurred about 150 kilometers northeast of Mogadishu, Somalia, and AFRICOM's initial assessment is that enemy combatants were killed and that no civilians were injured or killed. And so U.S. forces will continue to partner with Somali armed forces to take the fight to these terrorists and degrade their ability to plan and conduct attacks that threaten the U.S. homeland, our forces, and civilians abroad. Now on to Homeland Defense. President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have been very, very clear that border security is national security. We spent decades defending foreign nations' borders while our own U.S. borders has been invaded by criminal illegal aliens, human smugglers, drug traffickers, and transnational gangs. The Department of Defense is proud to defend our homeland and the territorial sovereignty of the United States. Although we've seen a 93% decrease in illegal border crossings, we will not stop until we have 100% operational control of our southern border. And over the weekend, Joint Task Force Southern Border assumed the mission from Joint Task Force North and reached initial operating capacity. Additionally, U.S. Northern Command announced on Saturday that the Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyer, the USS Gravely, departed Naval Weapons Stations Yorktown for a scheduled deployment to the Gulf of America. We're actually making some history from the podium today. It's the first time we've recognized the Gulf of America in the Pentagon press briefing room, which is kind of cool. So it's not only vital for the United States to have control of our border via land, it's equally important to control our territorial waters. And this deployment directly supports U.S. Northern Command's mission to protect our sovereignty. And lastly, Secretary Hegseth spoke with Qatari Minister of State for Defense Affairs, His Excellency Sheikh Saud Al Thani, to discuss operations to eliminate the Houthi threat to American commerce and restore American freedom of navigation. The Secretary acknowledged Qatar's strong partnership in addressing shared security challenges across the region, including Syria and the Red Sea. And with that, I'll turn it over to my counterpart, Grinch, for some more opening comments on CENTCOM strikes. General, floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for the opportunity to provide you a brief operational update on our operations against the Houthis. On Saturday, the 15th of March, shortly after 1 p.m. Eastern Time, at the direction of the President, U.S. Central Command began precision strike operations against the Houthis to restore freedom of navigation and American deterrence. The initial wave of strikes hit over 30 targets at multiple locations, degrading a variety of Houthi capabilities. These included terrorist training sites, unmanned aerial vehicle infrastructure, weapons manufacturing capabilities, and weapons storage facilities. It also included a number of command and control centers, including a terrorist compound where we know several senior Houthi unmanned aerial vehicle experts were located. On Sunday, strike operations continued against additional headquarters locations, weapons storage facilities, as well as detection capabilities that have been used to threaten maritime shipping in the past. Today, the operation continues, and it will continue in the coming days until we achieve the President's objectives. Thanks, and I look forward to your questions.
And with that, in this very crowded briefing room, I'll take some of your questions. And the first, I'll go to Logan from Newsmax.
Sean, thank you for taking my question. This really is for both of you. A question about the Bashad, that's Iran's spy ship that has been directing the Houthis throughout this conflict. Is it still operating in support of the Houthis? If so, do you know where it is?
General, turn it over to you to address that.
Sure. We know that the Iranians have provided a variety of assistance to the Houthis over the years, including some suspected intelligence. We do know that some had previously come from the Bashad. The Bashad is not currently being used for those operations, but we do know that other vessels are contemplated for those sorts of operations, so we're watching very closely to see if they return to the AO.
I would also say that, when you look at how the previous administration conducted business with Iran. You know, they really empowered Iran to fund and export terror all around the world, whether it's with Hezbollah, Hamas, specifically with the Houthis. I mean, it's very clear. I think President Trump has made it very clear that he's put Iran on notice. I mean, I'm sure that you saw his tweet today that essentially saying, and I'm paraphrasing, that any shot fired at U.S. forces by the Houthis would be considered a shot from Iran. And this is the president showcasing leadership from the Oval Office. And frankly, bringing moral clarity back to the United States of America. We know who the enemies of this country are and the enemies of a free world are. And President Trump has put them on notice, as you saw with Iran this morning. But okay. Gabby.
Thank you for taking my question. I wanted to run back to TDA and MS-13 deportations to El Salvador's terrorism confinement center. Do we anticipate to renew that partnership as it will conclude after 1 year? If yes, what does that look like from a cost perspective? And how is Guantanamo Bay factored into dealing with criminal aliens and terrorists, considering this new Pentagon is more focused on securing the border?
Well, that's a great question. So I think part of your question about El Salvador should be referred to the State Department. But I'll say that the Department of Defense is proud to defend our homeland and our sovereignty in helping to deport transnational criminal organizations like Tren de Agua. We're proud to support that mission. I don't know, General, do you have anything to offer about Guantanamo Bay and our force posture there?
Sure. I just had a couple of things for you, Gabby. We do continue to have a substantial presence at Guantanamo Bay to ensure that we're ready to receive any illegal aliens that the Department of Homeland Security would like to send there. We're monitoring their requirements closely, and we're in daily contact with them to make sure that we can meet them to the best of our ability.
Tom?
Sean, if the Iranian ships are operational and start helping the Houthis, will they be targeted? And for the general, any sense of number of military casualties so far and any civilian casualties in Yemen?
Well, that's a great question, General. If you'll permit me to answer.
Sure, go ahead.
So I think that I certainly don't want to get out in front of the Commander-in-Chief and the Secretary as it pertains to clearance of strikes and who will be targeted. But I think the President's made very clear that all options are on the table.
Yeah, Tom, just on your question of casualties, military casualties, we have some initial estimates. I hesitate to say what they are because they're very much estimates at this point, but I think in terms of dozens might be a safe overall characterization.
Dozens of military?
Yeah, dozens of military casualties so far, but I really can't characterize it much better than that at this point. We'll learn more as we go. On the civilian casualty side, no indications of any civilian casualties. We, of course, have seen some of the accusations by the Houthis. We look at those closely when they do come in, but we have no credible indications of any civilian casualties.
You know, and I'd like to add to what General Grinch said. Anytime you're close to an operation like this, having been, in combat front towards enemy before, the fog of war is a real thing. So before we announce something here from the podium, we're going to make sure that we get it right. And I think part of that is just taking the time to evaluate and doing a proper battle damage, BDA battle damage assessment, sensitive site exploitation. And frankly, that stuff just takes time. And so before we make any sort of those announcements, we're going to do a real hard look and make sure that we get it right before we announce it to you. Charlie from CBS.
Yes, thank you, Sean. Changing the subject slightly. Is the DoD considering rescheduling the performance of young musicians in the Marine Band that was canceled because of the
All right, just listening in there to the Pentagon press briefing. Let's slide away for a quick 2-minute break. We'll get you back out to this after this. All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. A live look there at our nation's capital as President Trump just arrived at the Kennedy Center for a tour and a board meeting. We did see a sparse press gaggle there as they're answering and asking questions of the president. We have not seen that be refed yet, as it was spotty. We'll take you out to that as soon as it happens. Right now, though, let's take you back out to the Pentagon press briefing as they're detailing the ordered airstrikes against the Houthi rebels in Yemen over the weekend. Let's listen in to this here on Live Now from Fox.
It's a question about Ukraine. Can you assess how the U.S. military, assess the status of U.S. military aid to Ukraine and the intelligence sharing, how that's going since it was disrupted maybe a week or so ago, and then restarted? What's being shared? What's being given? What's happening with that?
Well, I can tell you that U.S. military aid to Ukraine has been turned back on, as well as intelligence sharing with our Ukrainian partners. But I'll tell you this. The president has been very clear since his time on the campaign trail that his focus with the war in Ukraine is bringing about peace and putting a distinct focus on peace and really to stop the dying. And so President Trump, along with his national security team, have been heavily involved in, along with Secretary Hegseth as well, heavily involved with Ukraine and Russia to try to broker that peace, understanding that there will likely be difficult conversations to be had on both sides when you're talking about, the release of hostages, when you're talking about potential ceasefire agreements, when you're talking about territory. As someone who's negotiated with some tough people on the battlefield, I can tell you it's a tough, imperfect, nuanced, and complicated process. And President Trump and Secretary Hegseth certainly understand that, with on the forefront of their mind peace as their first and foremost priority. General, do you have anything to add?
No, I would just echo what you said, sir, which is, the status of U.S. military aid, it has been turned back on. We've got confirmed reports that it is continuing or is flowing back into Ukraine. And of course, daily reports on the outcome of the intelligence sharing and those efforts. So all of that is as it was previously.
So I'm going to stick with the phones here just a second. I got Christina from Breitbart on the phones. Do I understand that?
Yes, thanks so much for doing that, Sean. Two questions. After U.S. strikes against the Houthis on Saturday, the Houthis fired drones and missiles at the Truman. Will there be a response to those attacks? And secondly, the Pentagon has deployed the USS Bravely. Can you tell us a little bit about what it will be doing there, exactly what its mission will be?
So I guess I'll address the first part of your question first, Christina, and General, I'll let you chime in. The question of the Houthis, I mean,
all right, you're just listening in there, the Pentagon, as we are now getting a very new feed as we continue to bounce around to some of these top events. I believe this is the board meeting at the Kennedy Center. President Trump making remarks.
It looked very good when we had it, but I'd like it to look beyond that. So we're going to spend a lot of effort, a lot of money on crime, and we're going to spend it on fixing up. We don't want graffitis on the beautiful white statuary marble, and we want to have our roads good and everything else. We'll be able to do that easily. And this is a part of it. I mean, Kennedy Center is a very big part of it. And you can't have this looking like it does. I'm so surprised because, I know the person who was in charge of it, and he's a good man. I never realized this was in such bad shape. I've been so busy, I haven't been able to be here in a long time. And I shouldn't be with what I'm doing. But I thought it was important because I've been hearing reports, and I thought it was very important to make this good. It's a very big part of the fabric of Washington, D.C., and we're going to make our capital great again, just like we're going to make our country great again. April 2nd is Liberation Day for our country because we're going to finally be taking in money. We're already doing it, a lot of money. As you know, we put down some early tariffs on people and countries that were not treating us well. And that's both.
All right, it appears the camera has removed the audio there. I'm not sure if they're kicking out the media right now from this board meeting or if they're just getting a different angle entirely. We're going to hang with it here as it goes to color bars. So it appears that they are removing the media from this event. We do have, as we continue on, I don't believe we have seen the playback of those event where reporters were asking questions as he arrived at the Kennedy Center, but a busy day. This is the lone really public event on the schedule for President Trump today in our nation's capital as he attended that board meeting. He was talking about tariffs, talking about the Kennedy Center and restoring it to what it once was. All right, we're following it all. Let's slide away for a quick 2 minutes. All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. We just saw those brief moments at the Kennedy Center with President Trump as he was at that board meeting, also taking a visit in our nation's capital as the media was removed in its entirety from that event. It was just very briefly that we heard some comments from him. That's going to be the lone public appearance on his schedule as of today. But it's been a busy few days for the president as this was what the White House put out over the weekend as President Trump ordered the airstrikes on the Houthi rebels in Yemen over the weekend. So you can see them here in Florida as he was briefed on this. We are now hearing from the Pentagon as they are giving more detail, answering questions from the media about this and much more in the international front. Let's listen into this here on Live Now from Fox.
Wondering what the hell it was all for. And I know, listen, I know that every day I wake up and I draw breath, I think about the men who I served with, who were my friends, who never came home from that fight. I've lost 30 friends in my support of the Afghan war, 30. And you ask yourself, you look yourself in the mirror, you ask yourself, what do we have to show for it? Not a whole lot. And so to your question of will people be held accountable? I think we have an obligation both to the American people and to the American warfighters who fought in Afghanistan to hold the leadership accountable in some way. Now, we don't know what that looks like right now, but to hold the leadership that was in charge of the Afghan withdrawal accountable. Because look, if you have a private that loses a sensitive item, that loses night vision goggles, that loses a weapon, you can bet that that private is going to be held accountable. The same and equal standards must apply to senior military leaders. So
I just want to follow up on what you just said.
Sure.
You said that that there needs to be a clear end state. And I know the goal is to have the Houthis stop their attacks, but what is the end state? What happens if the Houthis don't stop their attacks or don't agree to say they'll stop their attacks, it doesn't seem like there is a clear end state, that this could just go on and on.
Well, in fairness, I mean, it's a great question, but in fairness, the operation's only been going on for 48 hours. And the president and secretary have been very clear on this, that the Houthis can determine when this ends. And until then, the campaign will be unrelenting until we, one, protect our homeland, and two, open up the shipping lanes there, so make sure that we have freedom of maneuver in that area. General, you have something to add?
I mean, what I might add is, while we won't talk about it publicly, just know that there is a design to the operation. There are specific effects that we're trying to achieve, and there's specific targets that have been selected and approaches that we're taking in order to achieve the president's end state. So it isn't that we're just striking capabilities. There's an intent behind every strike and every target that we go after.
To that point, you mentioned that this is not like it was before. So what is different about the targeting that you're doing this time that wasn't true under the Biden administration?
Yeah, I give the short answer to that, but again, without going into too many operational details for security reasons, but it's a much broader set of targets that we've been able to action in this case. And the other key differences are the delegation of authorities from the president through Secretary Hegseth down to the operational commander. So that allows us to achieve a tempo of operations where we can react to opportunities that we see on the battlefield in order to continue to put pressure on the Houthis.
Thank you very much. Will this operation include sending ground troops into Yemen? If so, how do you achieve your objective of making them say enough without sending ground troops?
Well, I'll tell you, it's very difficult, if not impossible, for us to talk about force posture from this podium, because as a commander who's been on the battlefield, it's very, very important to keep the enemy guessing, keep your adversaries guessing. Now, that's not to say that we've got ground troops in Yemen. That's not to say that we're sending ground troops in, but it's difficult to talk about that stuff for operational security reasons from the podium. But General, you have anything to add?
No, nothing to add to that. I think that's exactly right.
Sean, can I follow up on that? You said that one of the things that you were waiting to do for the BDA was sensitive site exploitation. Does that include U.S. boots on the ground or any kind of American personnel on the ground to do that?
I can't talk about that stuff from the podium, but we have ways of conducting sensitive site exploitations without ground troops on the ground.
Yeah, it does not always require boots on the ground, and I'll just leave it at that.
So, can I also ask you about if there's any U.S. military assessment? I know that you're still on, the BDA is ongoing, but is there any military assessment about how much of the Houthis' capabilities were degraded by these first couple of rounds? And can you say anything? The President's Truth Social mentioned going after leaders, which seems to be one of the things that's different here. Can you say anything about any of the leaders that were targeted here?
Yeah, on the second part of the question, I'll just go to my opening statement where I mentioned that there was a unmanned aerial vehicle facility that was struck with several key leaders. Those were key individuals who led their unmanned aerial vehicle enterprise and were some of the technical experts in there. So think those types of individuals that we might be targeting as part of the command and control.
And so we have destroyed command and control facilities, weapons manufacturing facilities, and advanced weapons storage locations. But again, this campaign is ongoing. It's difficult to talk about all this stuff from the podium, and we're not going to say anything from the podium until we're 100% sure that we have it right. I got time for one more question.
Sean, you mentioned President's Truth Social. Is the U.S. military considering military options for Iran?
I don't want to get out in front of the president or the secretary, but clearly, I mean, I think the president's Truth Social was pretty clear, and I think the meaning is right there for everybody. I think everybody understands what he means. I don't want to get out in front of the president, but all options are on the table at this time. And that's all I got.
Quick clarification for General. You said 30 targets. Is that over all 3 days?
No, that was on the first day. And it was over 30 targets, so not a specific number for you, but over 30 targets, multiple locations, and then additional targets today, and additional targets yesterday on Sunday, and additional targets today that obviously I won't go into because they're executing now.
So thank you, everybody. Listen, we're done. There'll be more of these, I promise. But thank you. It was a great first press briefing. Really appreciate you all and your commitment to telling the story of the warfighters. But thank you. We'll see you next time. Thanks.
All right, just listening in there as they wrap up this Pentagon press briefing as they were getting quite a few questions about the airstrikes that were ordered by President Trump over the weekend of the Houthi rebels in Yemen. So we're following that very closely here on Live Now from Fox. And of course, the details were coming in as you saw that image on social media of this as President Donald Trump launched a large-scale military strike against the Iran-aligned Houthis on Saturday over the group's attacks against Red Sea shipping, killing at least 31 people. This, according to officials there. Trump also warned Iran, the Houthis' main backer, that it needed to immediately halt support for the group. He also said if Iran threatened the United States, quote, America will hold you fully accountable and we won't be nice about it. So some big comments here. And of course, they also noted the contrast between what the Trump administration has done in terms of this, saying they will continue on. They will not cease until the Houthis' capabilities of striking ships in the Red Sea is eliminated, versus what happened with the Biden administration as they were going just one at a time, a slow attack on different entities in that region. All right, I'm Andy Mack here on Live Now from Fox. We'll follow all the top headlines. All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I am Andy Mack as they are now rolling playback for President Trump as he met with reporters just ahead of the Kennedy Center board meeting. Let's take you out to this. We did show it to you a little bit earlier, but the service was spotty. Let's take you out to it in full and hear what the president has to say here on Live Now from Fox from mere moments ago.
Thank you very much. We're here to have our first board meeting, Kennedy Center, and it's in tremendous disrepair, as is a lot of the rest of our country, most of it because of bad management. This is a shame what I've watched and witnessed. They spent a fortune, $250 million, and they built these rooms that nobody's going to use, rooms underground. And I've often wondered, what are the big cubes that they have outside that block the view? They're cubes with a door in them so that people can get down to rooms that nobody's going to use. And it's a shame. It's a shame. The other thing is we're going to have a little problem with some people that work here. We had Lee Greenwood wanted to sing a little song today. And because of the cost in the union structure, for him to sing a song just for the board, just a board meeting. It was going to cost $30,000. That doesn't sound too good. They wanted $30,000 to move a piano. So you can't have that. So we're gonna fix it up. But it's really emblematic of our country. But the Kennedy Center, you look at the columns outside, you look at, I mean, they're supposed to be covered by something, whether it's marble or whatever, granite. They were never covered. They were painted. But bringing it to more modern times, a lot of money's been given to it, and the money has not been properly spent. They built rooms underground with no windows, no nothing, that will not be used ever. You're not going to have people use them. It's such a waste of money, such a terrible waste, but we'll bring it back, we'll make it great again. But it is so much like what I'm witnessing in other places. We have open borders. We have men playing in women's sports. It's all the same thing. It's all the same mentality and thinking. So I'm very disappointed when I look around. The bottom line, it has tremendous potential, and we'll work with Congress. As you know, it's a very public facility, and we'll do what has to be done. We'll be having a meeting with the Speaker in the not-too-distant future. I think it's important to save this structure in this building. I think maybe we close up some of the work that's been done and built, because it was done terribly. It was done terribly. The concept was very bad.
Mr. President, why was it so important for you to come here today to the Kennedy Center? You have so much on your plate. Why come today here?
This represents a very important part of D.C. and actually our country. And I think it's important to make sure that our country is in good shape and is represented well. When people look at this, I've been hearing for a long time that they come here and they're very disappointed. When they come here, I want them to be excited. We're bringing a big move on to Washington, D.C. We're going to stop the crime. We actually worked with the mayor. We took down a lot of tents. They were all over the place in front of the State Department. And they did a good job of that. I was very happy with what the mayor did. She was able to get them out quickly and at my direction and at the direction of the administration. But we're cleaning up Washington, D.C. This is a big part of Washington, D.C.
Mr. President, for Americans visiting Washington, perhaps they're thinking about seeing a show at the Kennedy Center.
Yeah.
What would you tell them? They've never been here before, they want to come check it out?
Yeah, I'd say come here and see a show. I was never a big fan of, I never liked Hamilton very much, and I never liked it. But we are going to have some really good shows. I would say this, come here and watch it, and you'll see over a period of time it'll improve very greatly physically, and we're going to get some very good shows. The thing that does well are Broadway hits, and we have some beauty. I guess we have Les Mis coming, and we have some others, but the Broadway hits have done very well. So I'm going to spend some time. We have a good board. In the meantime, we're running the country, and we're running it well. We have tremendous things to report. Tomorrow I'm speaking with President Putin of Russia to save some soldiers who are in deep trouble. They're captured. Essentially, they're surrounded by Russian soldiers. So I give you a lot of different things in one news conference, but it's a big deal. They're surrounded by Russian soldiers, and I believe if it wasn't for me, they wouldn't be here any longer. I was able to get them not to do anything at this moment. But it's a bad situation in Russia, and it's a bad situation in Ukraine. What's happening in Ukraine is not good, but we're going to see if we can work a peace agreement, a ceasefire and peace, and I think we'll be able to do it. I'm speaking to President Putin tomorrow morning, yes. Yeah. No, not at all. No, really the opposite. I think it was appreciated, and we have to understand, and you have to understand, that if I see somebody doing something bad that's going to cause a lot of death, the only reason I'm involved, and this is Russia and Ukraine, but a lot of people, it's humanity. I'm involved for humanity. A lot of people are being killed over there, and we had to get Ukraine to do the right thing. It was not an easy situation. You got to see a little glimpse at the Oval Office. But I think they're doing the right thing right now, and we're trying to get a peace agreement done. We want to get a ceasefire and then a peace agreement. Who you with? So we're going to see how it all works out. This was Joe Biden's deal. This isn't Trump's deal. This is Joe Biden's deal. He gave $350 billion to Ukraine, and he shouldn't have done it. It wasn't secured. Europe gave $100 billion, and it was in the form of a loan. They get their money back. And they should actually have much more in it than us. But Joe Biden was grossly incompetent, and it's a shame what they did. $350 billion. We could have rebuilt our entire Navy for that kind of money.
Mr. President, sir, there were 18 Secret Service agents protecting Hunter Biden in South Africa this weekend. Who's paying for that, and do you plan to revoke the Secret Service protection?
Well, we have done that with many. I would say if there are 18 with Hunter Biden, that will be something I'll look at this afternoon, okay? Sir? I just heard about it for the first time. So you have 18 Secret Service going, where is he exactly?
In South Africa.
In South Africa. And South Africa, you know, is on a watch list. You know that. Because what they're doing to people is brutal. And I've stopped having money go to South Africa. You know that. Billions of dollars. So he's in South Africa. That's very interesting. All right, I'm going to take a look at that. Thank you very much.
A Catholic church in Wichita, Kansas over the weekend was vandalized, statues destroyed, glass smashed, graffiti all over the place. Church officials in Kansas call it a hate crime. I know you signed an EO eradicating anti-Christian bias, but sir, what more can the White House do to protect places of worship like St. Patrick's Church in Wichita, Kansas?
Well, we're going to take a look. I love Wichita. You know, I got big votes there. We won that state by a lot. We'll take a look at that. When did this happen?
This happened over the weekend, sir. Again, statues destroyed.
Terrible. Yeah, I think it's a terrible thing. And this was a Catholic church.
Yes, St. Patrick's.
Okay, I'm going to take a look at it. Okay. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, sir.
All right, you're just listening in there, President Trump, as he makes a visit to the Kennedy Center for this board meeting, of course, talking about the presentation there, wanting to have Lee Greenwood, his friend, the singer, on hand, but that would not happen. Also referring to the call that's expected to take place with Russian President Vladimir Putin tomorrow, as he has hoped, optimism that there could be a ceasefire, a peace deal in place there to stop the fighting during this war in Ukraine. All right, I'm Annie Mack here on Live Now from Fox, and it appears they're also playing back just this board meeting from President Trump at this Kennedy Center. Let's listen into this here on Live Now from Fox and hear what he has to say there.
This stuff is such garbage, and yet it's been selling for 30 years. I said somebody's made a fortune. They get every highway, and it's always bad. But here it's really bad because it's old and bad, and it looks terrible. When we had the head of China coming in to top people right underneath President Xi, and he'll be coming in the not too distant future. When we had India last week, we had France last week. We had a lot of people. We had Ireland, we had UK, and they come in, and I say, how's it looking? They say, oh, it looks much better, you know, that's great. But it looked very good when we had it, but I'd like it to look beyond that. So we're going to spend a lot of effort, a lot of money on crime, and we're going to spend it on fixing up. We don't want graffitis on the beautiful white statuary marble, and we want to have our roads good and everything else. We'll be able to do that easily. And this is a part of it. I mean, Kennedy Center is a very big part of it. And you can't have this looking like it does. I'm so surprised because, you know, I know the person who was in charge of it, and he's a good man. I never realized this was in such bad shape. I've been so busy, I haven't been able to be here in a long time. And I shouldn't be with what I'm doing. But I thought it was important because I've been hearing reports, and I thought it was very important to make this good. It's a very big part of the fabric of Washington, D.C. And we're going to make our capital great again, just like we're going to make our country great again. April 2nd is Liberation Day for our country because we're going to finally be taking in money. We're already doing it, a lot of money. As you know, we put down some early tariffs on people and countries that were not treated.
All right, as you saw there, they were kicking out the media from this as we just saw that brief event at the Kennedy Center, the board meeting taking place in our nation's capital. I'm Andy Mack here on Live Now from Fox. We're back after this. All right, welcome back in here to Live Now from Fox. I'm Andy Mack. Let's shift gears real quickly here on Live Now from Fox and take you out to Phoenix, Arizona, as the two senators there, Ruben Gallego, Mark Kelly, on hand for a town hall as they discuss Medicaid health care coverage. Let's take you in right now as they're answering questions from the media here in the Phoenix area in Scottsdale, I believe. Let's listen in.
Well, he's still the minority leader in the Senate. We all don't have to vote the same way all the time. Every single day we're taking votes, and I'll vote different than Chuck on a number of things, and then sometimes I even vote different than Ruben.
Did he communicate enough with you guys?
We talked and talked and talked. I did not want to go to one more meeting on this subject.
So you weren't surprised by his
We are unified, and we agree with him on one thing, is that we have to protect Medicaid cuts. That's what this was about. He's 100% in alignment with us. He understands that Arizona and this country will be absolutely devastated if we cut Medicaid to give Elon Musk and his billionaires a tax cuts. I think that's where we're working on. That's the focus that we're moving on going forward.
And by the way, the leadership issue here that we're facing is Donald Trump in the White House. That's doing unprecedented things that are not in the Constitution, and cutting government programs that have a dramatic impact, not only here in the United States, but across the planet. And he's making us less safe and less prosperous. And these tariffs are raising the prices on so many things for families. And they're going to keep going up. And he's doubling down on bad economic policy, and it's hurting everybody. That's the problem.
Can we hear from each of...
What's that?
You both let loose with some pretty coarse
Today?
I did not.
Along with some of your other colleagues.
What did I say?
I did not.
You said pissed off. The other senator dropped the F-bomb. Do you think
I did. I'm sorry.
Do you think that this language is helping your cause in Washington?
The word pissed off? I'm fine with it. Yvonne, are you fine with pissed off?
I have no opinion on
Oh, come on.
I will say I should not have sworn. But look, if you had listened to the woman speak about what a dreadful situation she's in, how could we not react like human beings? Her and her husband literally adopted this young woman from foster care, and now because of their good nature, she may not have Medicaid. Had she stayed in foster care, she actually would have 100% guaranteed Medicaid. But because they wanted to take care of her, give her a real experience, give her a home, they're putting themselves at risk of not providing this security. So yes, I swore. But things are bad right now. Things are really bad for people in Arizona that are worried about Medicaid. And maybe I did let loose on that one, but it's because it's a real reaction to someone that's really hurting.
Yvonne.
I would like to hear from each of you on how you're feeling these days on your previous stances about the filibuster.
Oh, you want to go first? I want to go first.
Yeah, I mean, so when has this filibuster actually worked for people? It tends to work for the Republicans, not so much for us. They generally just want taxes and judges on things or cut, really bad policies. Hey, I voted to get rid of it to protect women's health care. And going forward, I would certainly take that same vote again.
Yeah, I don't believe in unilateral disarmament. I don't like nuclear weapons, but we as a country are going to have nuclear weapons until other countries get rid of their nuclear weapons. And so it's not my job to make the Republicans' jobs easier. And so unless there's some new agreements, we're going to continue playing by the rules that are existing right now. And that's what we tried to do. We tried to make sure we were protecting Arizonans. So, we had cuts to our bases in Yuma, $90 million cut. We try to protect the water treatment plants. We try to protect the fact that we're about to go into fire season. They were cutting more than $500 million from wildfire management. That's going to affect Arizona. So we're playing by the rules that are on the table right now. And then if things change, then we'll change with it.
Senator, Medicare and Medicaid were, intended for temporary programs originally. Do you think it is
were intended for temporary? I don't think any Americans feel that Medicaid and Medicare are temporary. It's health care.
By Johnson, they were intended to be temporary programs. It has blown up.
It is health care for Americans.
For any tweaks at all?
Of course. We should always be looking for efficiencies in how we deliver health care. And we should be looking for waste, fraud, and abuse. That's not what they're doing. They're talking about blanket cuts that are going to kick hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people, hundreds of thousands in our state, millions of people across the country off of their health insurance.
Last question, Fox 10.
Yeah, so Senators, tall girl, a little uncomfortably close here to Senator Mark Kelly, my apologies. When we talk to other colleagues on the other side of this on these issues of cuts, their response is that DOJ is making sure that they're getting rid of fraud and waste, and they also say that some of this is fear-mongering. What is your response to that?
Please take this. Can you explain to me what happened to Kyle, who was a veteran working for Homeland Security and without any notice was just kicked out? Can they explain to me where is the cuts that are protecting, why do they cut these programs at the VA that are important for veterans to do outreach, to deal with PTSD? There are ways to do cuts. As a matter of fact, I think a lot of us were actually willing to sit down and have real smart conversations in a very constructive way of how we make these cuts. And there have been cuts before. If you saw during Bill Clinton administration, they had systematic cuts that were done in a very smart way. We can do that. But what they're doing is just absolutely arbitrary. Is it smart to get rid of nuclear scientists that were in charge of keeping our nuclear stockpiles safe? No. Somehow these guys thought that was a really smart cut. They had to go and track those guys down and bring them back. Was it smart to cut scientists that are in charge of clamping down on avian flu, the bird flu that's costing the price of eggs to go up? No, that wasn't smart. They're cutting potentially 80,000 veterans from the VA when for years, both Republican administration and Democratic administrations has said we need more VA employees. We need more VA support in order to fulfill the demand of a growing growing veteran population. No, that's not smart. If they wanted to do something, we could do it together. We could do it in a manner that is respectful also of these employees, 1/3 of them being veterans, and at the same time find real cuts and real waste, and actually at the same time protecting services too.
A lot of the questions you guys received were from your constituents saying, we want to see you do more, protect our healthcare, push back on Republicans. What do you say to the criticism that Democrats aren't doing enough, and how do you address that?
Well, you try to do more. I mean, I'm going to take back what I heard here today. Kiana talked about the house burning down with people inside. Take that message to my Republican colleagues and others, and just continue to fight. This isn't over yet. My expectation, as you can see, they really want to do this. They want to come up with $880 billion from Medicare or Medicaid or both, probably Medicaid, to help make this big tax cut for billionaires not look so bad. So instead of it looking like $6 trillion added to the debt, it's only $4 trillion. That's why they are doing this. And Ruben and I are going to continue to fight. Thank you. Thank you.
En español, sí, está español. Esos cortes lo que va a ocurrir es que muchas de las personas, especialmente los niños de Arizona, van a tener cortes que...
All right, you're just listening in there to Ruben Gallego, Mark Kelly answering questions about this town hall there in Scottsdale, Arizona. Let's take you back out to this event in full, answering questions, meeting with some of their constituents there in that state. Let's listen into this here on Live Now from Fox.
They're literally going to be cutting people off. And unless they understand and they feel the pressure from the, voters, Arizonans, that they're going to have electoral consequences to them gutting you to give more tax cuts to Elon Musk, they're going to do it. So talk to your neighbors, have your neighbors talk to their neighbors, and then reach out to your local congressman, both Democrat and Republican, and tell them, like, you will not stand for this. And you will remember come election time, because that's what they want you to do. They want you to forget about it. They're going to distract you with something else, some audacious, bombastic thing that the Trump administration is going to do right after they cut Medicaid. And then they hope come November that they're going to distract you with something else, and that way you keep on voting them in. That's their plan. Just don't let them fulfill their plan. That's it.